Welcome back. A new survey showing a majority of Canadians think that boycotting American-made goods or travel to the U.S. is helpful.
This is the U.S. departures area of Montreal's Trudeau Airport, which is particularly quiet at the height of summer. And one of the most visible signs Canadians are staying away.
With Canada Day weekend upon us, the capital is bustling with energy and tourists, many people taking advantage of the new Canada Strong Pass.
You don't have a Canadian bucket list? Now is the time to create that bucket list.
The Canada Strong Pass aims to keep travel here instead of across the border.
Our government is making it easier for families to choose Canada as they make their summer plans.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. Something unusual just happened in Washington, shaking one of the world's closest friendships. During a White House press briefing on October 7, 2025, Donald Trump casually remarked that Canada could avoid tariffs if it became America's 51st state. It sounded like a joke, but for millions of Canadians, it was anything but funny. Within hours, his words spread across social media, reopening old debates about independence and national pride. The hashtag #51STState exploded, hitting over 4.8 million mentions in just 2 days, not just from politicians or critics, but from ordinary Canadians asking a pointed question: does Washington still see Canada as a partner or merely an extension of itself? In Ottawa, the reaction came swiftly but carefully. Former Ambassador Frank McKenna warned that U.S.-Canada relations were at their lowest point in decades. Yet Prime Minister Mark Carney chose silence. No fiery statements. No angry tweets, just deliberate restraint that left analysts speculating about his next move. Sometimes, the quietest response carries the loudest message. And this time, that silence wasn't hesitation. It was strategy. Just days after Trump's remarks went viral, Canada quietly unveiled something that spoke louder than words: the Canada Strong Pass. No threats, no slogans. Just a simple card giving Canadians free access to national parks, museums, and heritage sites. On the surface, it looked like a tourism initiative. Beneath it, however, was a clear statement of unity and self-reliance. The program ran from December 12, 2025 through January 15, 2026, later extended into the summer. It encouraged citizens to explore their own country, turning domestic travel into an act of national pride. Prime Minister Carney described the program as a way for Canadians to celebrate themselves when others challenge their sovereignty. Tourism Minister Reggie Valdez went further, calling it the perfect opportunity at a time when many Canadians were already avoiding trips south due to new U.S. tariffs. Analysts praised it as a masterclass in subtle diplomacy, a soft but sharp counterstrike that redirected public frustration into economic strength. Rather than meeting insult with anger, Canada met it with confidence and creativity. The impact of the Canada Strong Pass reached far beyond parks and museums. It sparked something deeper, a quiet movement rooted in pride, not politics. Across the country, Canadians began making deliberate choices that reinforced local identity. Grocery chains like Schwazze Incorporated started reducing U.S. imports, turning instead to local and European suppliers. On social media, new hashtags began trending: #BuyCanadianFirst and #SkipTheSouth, garnering tens of millions of views. Everyday purchases suddenly carried symbolic weight. Statistics Canada reported a striking trend. Cross-border travel to the United States dropped by 23% in the first 7 months of 2025. This decline wasn't the result of new laws or formal boycotts. It was driven purely by sentiment. Economists began referring to it as intentional economics, a phenomenon where emotion and identity shape market behavior. Frank McKenna put it best: this isn't a protest in the streets. It's a rebellion with wallets. And that quiet rebellion started to make waves across the border. From Florida's beaches to California's coast, the absence of Canadian tourists became impossible to ignore. Hotels sat half empty, rental cars collected dust, and local businesses, from diners to theme parks, began feeling the chill of an unexpected economic winter. According to the Washington Post, by April 2025, nearly 4 million fewer Canadians had visited the United States that year, costing the U.S. tourism industry an estimated $4.3 billion in lost revenue. Fort Lauderdale's airport saw arrival from Canada fall by 20%, while hotel bookings in Orlando plunged by 35%. What started as a casual remark at a Washington press briefing had transformed into a test of loyalty, identity, and quiet power. Canada's response wasn't loud or defiant. It was steady, proud, and deeply effective. Sometimes strength isn't in shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's in knowing when to stay silent and letting that silence speak for an entire nation. In Vancouver, travel agencies reported a stunning 90% collapse in US-bound tour bookings compared to the previous year. The numbers told a clear story. This wasn't a temporary dip in tourism. It was a tectonic shift. States like Florida, Arizona, and California began lobbying the White House to ease tensions, warning that the fallout with Canada was bleeding their local economies dry. As CNN described it, this was the quietest yet most devastating tourism crisis America had faced in a decade. The message from Canadians was subtle but unmistakable. They didn't need to shout to be heard. Their absence spoke louder than any protest. While the United States scrambled to fill empty hotels and quiet beaches, Canada was turning absence into opportunity. The Canada Strong Pass, initially dismissed by critics as a symbolic welfare-style tourism perk, proved to be something far more strategic. It became a case study in how a nation can adapt under pressure, transforming domestic travel into a statement of unity and self-reliance. Ottawa had effectively turned emotion into momentum, redirecting national sentiment into tangible economic energy. Within just weeks of its launch, Parks Canada reported a 10% rise in visitors. Museums across the country saw attendance climb 15%, and Via Rail recorded more than 50,000 bookings made directly through the pass. Over 240,000 tourism-related businesses, from local inns and restaurants to transport providers, benefited from the surge, helping sustain an estimated 2 million jobs nationwide. The campaign slogan, "See Canada, Be Canada," spread across social media and television, turning leisure travel into an act of civic pride. Provinces like Quebec, Alberta, and British Columbia recorded their strongest domestic tourism growth in 5 years. Economists estimated that the initiative successfully redirected between 3 and 4 billion Canadian dollars that would normally flow south, keeping that spending circulating within the national economy. What began as a quiet show of pride evolved into a deliberate act of economic resilience, a reminder that even in a globalized world, tourism can become a tool of strategy. But by this point, it was clear that something much bigger than tourism was taking shape. What started as a restrained response to a controversial remark from Washington had transformed into a cultural and economic movement. It was beginning to redefine how Canadians saw themselves, their independence, and their place in a rapidly shifting world. The Canada Strong Pass, though designed as a domestic travel incentive, carried an impact that reached far beyond vacations. It sparked a conversation about sovereignty that rippled through daily life, into wallets, workplaces, classrooms, and communities. A national survey conducted in the third quarter of 2025 revealed that 78% of Canadians now prefer to buy products labeled Made in Canada. Domestic brands reported average sales growth of 12 to 15% since the program's introduction, one of the most significant shifts in consumer behavior since the early 2000s. For many citizens, buying local had evolved from an act of economic support into a quiet affirmation of identity. Each purchase became a statement of solidarity, a way to reinforce national pride during a time when external pressures seemed to challenge it. Small businesses, online creators, and local influencers emerged as unexpected ambassadors of this new mindset. Campaigns such as Support Local, Protect Canada, and Proudly Canadian began trending across social platforms, turning what once felt like a niche initiative into a mainstream narrative of economic unity. Economists and sociologists began describing this as consumer sovereignty, a form of soft power where citizens express national pride not through politics or protest, but through their everyday economic choices. The ripple effects of this mindset extended well beyond retail. It began shaping conversations in technology, education, and sustainable manufacturing. Canadian startups promoting homegrown innovation gained new visibility, while universities started emphasizing Canadian-made research, technology exports, and creative industries. The idea of economic independence was no longer confined to policy papers. It was becoming a cultural aspiration shared across generations that in many ways, what began as an emotional response to an offhand remark from Donald Trump was turning into something far more enduring, a collective redefinition of what it means to be Canadian. It showed that national strength could be expressed not only through political rhetoric or defense spending, but through calm, deliberate choices that reinforce internal confidence. As Washington wrestled with the diplomatic fallout of a single comment, Ottawa had managed to turn it into an opportunity, one that tested not just foreign policy, but national identity itself. In an era where tourism, consumer behavior, and trade intersected with questions of pride and purpose, Canada's measured response offered a glimpse of a new model of influence, one built on restraint, unity, and quiet confidence. Analysts now describe the U.S.-Canada relationship as entering a period of mutual dependence amid eroding trust. Each side still relies heavily on the other, yet both are learning how fragile that balance can be. Within this tension, the Canada Strong Pass has evolved into something much larger than a travel card. It represents a prototype for a broader philosophy of economic self-reliance, one that could extend into education, culture, and even energy policy. European observers have drawn comparisons between Canada's approach and the